I will be discussing what the 25 unused type combos would look like, potentially, compared to Pokemon that already exist. So what I'll be doing is I'll be showing you Pokemon that already exist, whose designs most match what I would imagine the unused type combos to look like. So, for example, if any type combination that hasn't been used while it hasn't been designed yet, I will imagine what it looks like, and instead of drawing it myself, since my art skills are very rudimentary, I'll just be using existent Pokemon. So let's get started. The first unused type combo is Normal Steel, and while I'm going to be using a lot of typical Pokemon stereotypes to make these assumptions and, I guess, suppositions, it's just not really anything concrete. Normal types typically are plain looking or small and cute, and steel types are usually metallic in nature, so if any normal steel type is going to be created in the future, which we are of course assuming that even if it's not next generation Gen 8, any generation after that, they will eventually create the 25 unused types. So with that being said, a normal and a steel combination would be plain, small and cute, and metallic. So the most similar to that image in my mind would be an Aeron, a Clink, Klefki, or a Tauros. With Tauros not being small and cute, but it being very plain looking and also very tough looking. I am not saying that the Pokemon shown are this type combination. I'm saying that when this type combination will eventually be created in a Pokemon, these Pokemon are what I imagine it most to look like in general. So I'm just, playing around with design ideas. So, moving along, while a normal steel type would look somewhat similar to any of these, a normal ghost type would be small, cute, plain, or creepy looking. Now, cast form fits the description most perfectly. If there's any Pokemon in the future that's going to be a normal ghost type, it's going to remind me of cast form most likely, since cast form by itself already looks like it could be confused for a normal or ghost type or both. Drifloon also fits this description. It looks like it could pass for a normal ghost type, and Whismur by itself without its evolutions looks kinda creepy with its eyes. It could pass for a normal ghost type as well. A normal ice type would also go along the same line, since a lot of normal types haven't been created yet. Snorunt, cast form, ice form, Cubchoo, and Alolan Vulpix all look small and cute and cold, which is again the most easy stereotype of normal types that I could combine in these things. Not all normal types are small and cute. Obviously you have Bufalon and Tauros and Regigigas, for example, but it's hard to combine those with any single type. So these Pokemon most resemble what I would think a normal ice type would look like. Moving along, a normal poison type was very difficult to come up with. Well, you could almost pretend to imagine what a normal poison type would look like. I couldn't find any Pokemon that perfectly fit that description. So I just took some basic poison types that don't look like any other types, so Ekans, Gulpin, and Trubbish. And I was like, okay, they're small, they're kind of cute if you like that sort of thing, and they're already poison types, so they could pass for normal poison types. So if a normal poison type was created in the future, they might look somewhat like this. Next, it was an easy to find one, because Game Freak has seriously passed up on this type combo every single generation. They could have created a normal bug type whenever they wanted. I have no idea why they haven't done it already. Caterpie could pass for a normal bug type, as could Ladybug, Wurmple, Kricketot especially, Karrablast even, Scatterbug for sure, and maybe even Grubbin. All of these bug types, while some of them are pure bug types, and some of them are a flying type like in a Ladybug's case, and almost all of them evolve with a secondary type eventually, they by themselves remind me of what a normal bug type should look like. So if a normal bug type is ever going to exist, they will definitely resemble one of these, because these Pokemon could already pass for a normal bug type. Moving along, normal rock type might seem a little awkward or maybe impossible to imagine, but it's not the hardest one. Small and cute may not seem like it fits the description of most of the rock types in previous generations, like Onyx and Aggron, but those rock types are just some of the rock types, the big tough ones. There's also small and cute rock types like Bonsly, Roggenrola, and Rockruff. In fact, these three most closely resemble my image of a normal rock type, like my idea of one, especially Rockruff. Rockruff could easily pass as a normal rock type. Next, Grassfire. Grassfire is probably one of the most difficult type combos to design, and that is probably why it hasn't been created yet, as is the case for most of these 25 unused type combos. Now, Grassfire could be, they could take many paths to this. You could combine plants and the sun, because plants require the sun to live, and that could be sort of a Grassfire path like Sunflora. Sunflora is based on a sunflower, and sunflowers are attributed with the sun, so maybe it could be a Grassfire type, which it isn't, but maybe a Mega Evolution of many of these Pokemon could fit the description, or maybe a future Sunflower Pokemon, but I doubt they would do another one, because Sunflora is already so unpopular with the most Pokemon fans. But it's just one way they could go. Another way they could go is with a Jack-o'-lantern route, which unfortunately has already been taken just like Sunflora, without even being a fire type, since a Jack-o'-lantern most likely resembles a ghost type because of its attribution with Halloween. So yeah, Sunflora is not a fire type, Gourgeist and Punkaboo is not a fire type, but both of them resemble what a grass fire type would, could, or should be. Moving along, a fire fairy type is also a type that people might be interested in. Castform's Honeyform looks like it could pass for a fire fairy type since it floats and it's cute. Rapidash, of course, could be attributed with mythical designs like unicorns and Pegasi, which maybe its Mega in the future could be a fire fairy type. Victini is a psychic type, but it could pass for a fire fairy type based on its small pixie-like design. And when Blacephalon was first introduced, I was almost certain that it would be the first fire fairy type based on its, colorful and playful design. I'm like, oh, it's like a circus thing, it could be a fairy type, but they made it a ghost type instead, which is a shame. But, all of these are the ideas of my image of a fire fairy type. But, they seem pretty different, obviously, because there's many ways you could go with this. Moving along, a fire ice type was probably the most difficult one on this list, or at least among the most difficult, because fire and ice are polar opposites. They've pulled off fire water, but that was only because Volcanion is like the embodiment of steam, and it itself is a mythical Pokemon, so it's not like it's very common or easy to catch. So again, fire ice, of course, doesn't exist for a reason. It's very, very difficult to pull off in a design, and there's a lot of logic that you have to explain for a Pokemon that's both a fire and ice type. So I used Kyurem White. Kyurem's white form, which is a fusion of Kyurem and Reshiram, which itself is a dragon ice type, just like all the Kyurem forms are dragon ice type, but because it's fused with Reshiram, it learns fire type moves. So a fire ice type most likely will be a legendary, and most likely will remind us of Kyurem White in its combination of fire and ice type, without of course being itself a dragon type, whatever this Pokemon will be. So, moving along, Electric Dark. This is something of a fan favorite, since Luxray itself has been, many fans have wanted Luxray for years to be itself an Electric Dark type, or at the very least a future Mega of Luxray should be an Electric Dark type, and I am one of these people. Luxray or Mega Luxray should definitely be an Electric Dark type, but even if that doesn't happen, some super strong legendary Pokemon like Zekrom could pass for an Electric Dark type because of its black coloring. It could easily pass for that if it wasn't a Dragon type, which is a shame, but either of these is a great idea. Electric Dark is not hard to imagine. Next, Electric Poison was one of the more difficult ones, because so far, no Pokemon that already exists is like a perfect fusion of an electric and a poison type. So the best they could come up with was Heliolisk, because Heliolisk is a lizard, and some lizards are poisonous, so maybe a poisonous electric lizard would be appropriate even though Heliolisk, of course, we all know is an electric normal type. But the problem with that is a electric poison lizard Pokemon would still be an electric lizard, just like Heliolisk, so it might be a bit derivative. So unfortunately, electric and poison, they have nothing in common. They're not even opposites like fire and ice or fire and water. They themselves are neither related or complete opposites. They just seem so random. So combining electric and poison in a design is understandably difficult. There's no wonder that there's no Pokemon of this type combo already. But if they want to go the route of the electric poison lizard, maybe, maybe not. But there's plenty of things that, Game Freak could come up with. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it takes them forever, but they will at some point create something that is better than this. So yeah, don't pay attention to my ideas for the difficult ones, because obviously it is not my profession. Of course, being a lizard would mean that Heliolisk would have a future Dragon Mega, potentially, which is something I would subscribe under, because, when it comes to making megas, which I'm gonna make a future video about potential megas based on false typings, slapping Dragon on something is easy. They slapped it on Ampharos without needing to. They slapped it on Sceptile, which was more appropriate. Lots of Pokemon can easily become a Dragon type through Mega Evolution, and Helioptile is one of them. Moving along, Electric Fighting is another personal favorite of mine because 2 Pokemon fit this description perfectly. They already learn Fighting type moves themselves, which is one of the reasons, and their designs are vaguely humanoid, and they look kind of, strong and muscular, so any future Electric Fighting type might fit these designs vaguely. This type combination might even be a fan favorite, because just imagining it seems like it could be very popular. Moving along, Rock Ghost may seem a little difficult at first, and I put Kabuto first because of that episode in the anime where Bill in the lighthouse was inside a Kabuto costume, and that just seemed creepy, especially to a kid. But other fossil Pokemon like Relicanth, except Relicanth is technically not a fossil Pokemon because it never went extinct, but most fossil Pokemon could pass for Rock Ghost types because they were resurrected or something like that, but Kabuto and Relicanth most fit the creepy ghost stereotype. Sableye, especially Mega Sableye, is perfect for this because it's already a ghost type and it has a crystal motif, so it's very easily passed as a rock type. I'm surprised Mega Sableye wasn't a rock type itself. But anything along the lines of a crystal ghost, something like Sableye, could pass for a rock ghost type. Lunatone is a psychic rock type, but it could pass for a rock ghost type because of its, lunar motif, like Lunala, which is a ghost type. Nihilego is a rock poison type, but its design is very ghost-like. It could easily pass for a rock ghost type in the future. And Stakataka, with its creepy eyes, instead of a rock steel type, could also pass for rock ghost type. So again, any future rock ghost type may remind us of one of these, because this is my idea of a rock ghost design. Next, Ground Fairy. Very difficult, because for some reason, ground types and fairy types are usually polar opposites. Fairies, on the most part, are feminine, or at least cute, or at least pink, or something along those lines. While ground types are usually buff, tough, rough, any other rhyme schemes, So Tapu Bulu himself may not be a ground fairy type, it's a grass fairy type. And technically, it might have originally been intended to be a fire fairy type based on the Oricorio pattern of each Oricorio matching the typing of their island's respective Tapu, with Tapu Bulu being an anomaly because it's a grass type and not a fire type, but they're both red. But I digress. A ground fairy type may be a legendary like Tapu Bulu because ground fairy seems like it matches the Bulu's whole, land spirit. All the Tapus are like land spirits, so a future legendary may pass as, a ground fairy as a future design, but overall, I don't know, this was a difficult one to match with previous Pokemon. Next, we have Ground Fighting, which was kind of easy because lots of Pokemon already are either, mineral in nature or vaguely humanoid. So Marowak could pass as a ground fighting type with its like using its bone as a weapon and maybe some sort of unique fighting style. Golurk, if it wasn't a ghost type, its humanoid shape might make it look like a fighting type because it looks pretty strong. Diggersby with its ears looks like it could fit perfectly, match up with a fighting type. You know, if it wasn't a normal type, it could pass for a ground fighting type. And Terrakion, if it wasn't a rock type, well, it could also pass as a ground fighting type, you know? So any future ground fighting type could easily, you know, be designed similar to these. At least, you know, this is what my idea of a ground fighting type would be. Moving along, a bug dark type. Now this was quite easy to find, and again, this is another example of a type combo that Game Freak has passed up countless times. They could have made a bug dark type anytime they want. Like anytime they wanted, they had so many chances to do this. Pinsir, it's so creepy looking with its freaking mouth, and it's just so freaky. Like, it could easily pass as a bug dark type, and even its Mega didn't even take the chance to become a bug dark type, so they passed that up. Ninjask is based on a ninja. It could easily be a bug dark type, but they had to make it flying for some reason. Drapion gave up its bug typing to become a poison dark type, but it could easily be a bug dark type. It's a perfect candidate. Yanmega is another perfect example of what a bug dark type could be. It is very violent in nature. It's just, you know, it fits the design perfectly of what a bug dark type can be. And Excelgor is also based on a ninja, so yeah, it could easily pass for a bug dark type. Now all the Pokemon here may or may not learn dark type moves already, which just furthers my idea of what a bug dark type might look like. So a future bug dark type Pokemon shouldn't be hard to design. They've done near perfect examples before, so any bug dark type Pokemon in the future, well, it shouldn't be long before we see one. Next was one of the most difficult ones possible. If someone asked you to imagine what a bug ice type Pokemon might look like, maybe it wouldn't be too difficult, but it wouldn't look like any previous Pokemon. And since my intention for this video was to compare hypothetical Pokemon designs with unused type combos, compare them to old Pokemon that already exist, I couldn't find any Pokemon that fit this description. So I had to go to the next best thing to ice, which was water. And when it comes to bug water types, the only one that to me resembled an ice type was Araquanid, or maybe even its pre-evolution Dewpider. Because I know its water bubbles are liquid, but imagine them frozen. And then you can imagine what a bug ice type Pokemon might look like. But again, this design may not be that easy for Game Freak, which is why they haven't created a bug ice type already. But this is just what I imagine, you know. It could look like whatever you want, but again, if it were easy, they would have done it by now. Next was Bug Dragon, and most people are already familiar with what the fans want. They want Flygon to be a bug dragon type, or at least its Mega Evolution, which is long awaited. We haven't had Mega Flygon yet, but we want it. Now, its pre-evolutions clearly resemble bug types, but they're not. They're ground types, and even Vibrava, which is a ground dragon type, clearly resembles some sort of bug, like a locust or a dragonfly. And again, I bring back Yanmega, because even if it wasn't a bug dark type, it could also pass as a bug dragon type because it is a dragonfly. So a dragonfly could be one way to pull off a bug dragon type. Maybe Mega Flygon will be a bug dragon type, or maybe they'll just make a future locust thing that is a bug dragon type, or maybe some sort of locust dragonfly hybrid. Who knows? But when I think of a bug dragon type, this is what comes to mind. Next, Bug Psychic. Another one of those difficult ones, but something that they have had the chance to, you know, design for a while now. Many people have, you know, intended Butterfree to be a Bug Psychic type, or at least its future potential Mega Evolution. Personally, I think that Mega Butterfree would make a great Bug Psychic type. It might lose its flying typing, of course, but still, Bug Psychic, not that hard to pull off. Butterfree personally already learns Confusion, Psychic, you know, Psychic type moves, no surprise. I think Psybeam too, you know. So it would be, you know, an appropriate candidate, but if it wasn't, any future Bug Psychic type, I don't know what it would look like, because we've had countless Bug types and countless Psychic types, and none of them are kind of unique, like, none of them look like a perfect fusion of bug and psychic. Like, all the psychic types don't look like bugs, all the bug types don't look psychic type, with Butterfree as an exception. So any future bug psychic type, you know, in my books would be Mega Butterfree. Anything other than that, well, it's up to interpretation. My creativity is not perfect. I would design these Pokemon if I had the talent. Moving along, Psychic Poison was another really difficult one to master. Like, I'm like, what? A Psychic Poison type? How would that even look like? So I looked through all the Psychic types, I looked through all the Poison types. None of the Psychic types look poisonous, none of the Poison types look Psychic. So I ended up with Malamar, which is a Dark Psychic type, because it is based on a squid. Squid are related to octopus. Octopi are sometimes poisonous, so there are poisonous octopi in the real world. So a poisonous octopus Pokemon would be a nice water poison type in the future. But Malamar, despite being based on a squid, is not a water type. So if they could create a new Pokemon in the future which is like Malamar, but lives outside of water, and is a psychic type like Malamar, but also poisonous, because, you know, my thought process, as you could tell, was extremely complicated. I'm like, I went way unnecessarily far. A psychic poison type would be unprecedented. That's the word for it. It just, there's no precedent. Malamar was just the only thing that came to mind, but here's the great thing about it. Whenever they do create a psychic poison type, it'll be so unique. It won't look like anything we've seen before, which is great. This is what we want. So we'll just leave Malamar aside as its own dark psychic thing, which was, you know, unique at the time, and we'll move right along. Fighting Fairy. Now this is an interesting one because Fighting and Fairy is hard to combine, which might be why it doesn't exist yet. I put Meditite because it looks like a pixie, so a future Fighting Fairy type might resemble Meditite as some sort of, you know, martial arts pixie. Granbull is a fairy type, but it could be a fighting type, as you can, you know, I don't know, it looks tough. It has those collar, like, has a collar and like those armbands. Maybe, you know, I'm pretty sure it learned some fighting type moves already. And Gallade, while its evolution family of Ralts, Curly, and Gardevoir are psychic fairy types, Gallade is stuck with psychic fighting, just like Meditite. If it had the fairy typing like its family, it could be a fighting fairy type instead of a fighting psychic type. But maybe none of these will pan out as, you know, future Mega Evolutions, and maybe whatever fighting fairy type is created in a future generation won't look anything like these. But I think that it should, because fighting suggests humanoid, though of course not all fighting types are humanoid, but most are, and fairy types in some cases are humanoid, so maybe they'll look like this. Next, Poison Fairy. Now this was a little tricky because obviously I was stuck with grass types. Why? Because there's plenty of grass types that could be fairy types, and there's plenty of grass types which are already poison types. There's just so many grass poison types. And so I ended up with poisonous looking fairies, or fairy-like looking poison Pokemon. Shiinotic, which is a grass fairy type, is a mushroom, and mushrooms are technically not plants, but they are usually poisonous. So a poisonous mushroom, which is a fairy type like Shiinotic, would easily pass as a poison fairy type. It's just a perfect example. Shiinotic itself should have been a poison fairy type instead of a grass fairy type. I mean, seriously though, we've had too many grass types, we need more fairy types. Roserade, I just threw it in there because I didn't want to leave Shiinotic by itself. It's a grass poison type, but if it wasn't a grass type, it, with its design, could pass as a fairy type maybe, because it's already a poison type, and like, you know, you got thorns and you got like a pixie-like appearance, you know. So my idea of a poison fairy type is along these lines, you know, hypothetically speaking. Next, Poison Steel. Now this might be crazy or maybe a good idea, you know. Poipole has needles in its head, as does its evolution, which went the dragon route, of course, like many Pokemon do. So maybe if a Poison Steel type will exist, its design may be based on needles, because needles, though not necessarily made of metal, kind of go along the steel direction, and needles is one way to inject a victim with poison, like, you know, with like poison needles. So many poison types already have spikes or needles, like Nidoking and Nidoqueen, as just, basic examples. Now, Poipole also has spikes, but it's not a steel type. If you could make the needles represent the steel aspect of a Pokemon, some Pokemon designed with poison needles or spikes could easily be a poison steel type. Now I'm thinking of sea urchins. Now, sea urchins haven't been in Pokemon yet. I mean, I guess there's Marini, but is it really an urchin? Maybe, maybe not. But I was thinking of spikes and needles. And Seviper is here because its tail kind of looks like a knife. It's already a blade. That's why it has its signature move of Poison Tail. So, and plus its fangs, but mostly its tail. Seviper's tail is a perfect example of why it could pass as a Poison Steel type. So maybe a future Pokemon would have Poison Blades. That would look epic. Next, we have Poison Ice, which again was just like how Araquanid was Bug Ice, as in my mind. But like, a Poison Ice type, you might think you know what it should look like, but it's just so foreign. I have no idea what Pokemon could pass as a Poison Ice type. It's just those two things don't match. There are no Pokemon of either of these types that resemble each other. And in real life, poisonous animals don't live in cold climates. Because poisonous animals are usually insects or lizards, and both of those can't survive in the cold. Reptiles and insects cannot survive in the cold, for the most part. So, yeah, this is why a Poison Ice type hasn't been created yet. But I went the path of Marini and Cloyster because they both have spikes, which again is the poison type stereotype. And they're both water types, and Cloyster's already an ice type, don't forget. And, I was like, okay, maybe Marini would be an igloo, with poison spikes coming out of it. Because Marini kind of looks like an igloo, somewhat. And Cloyster is already an ice type, so its spikes remind me of poison, so... And it's even purple, so... Poison Ice, Any future Poison Ice type might look like this, maybe not. I am getting way, these ideas are getting really out of hand, they're not even realistic. Next, Dark Fairy, which is the last, I believe, unused type combo. We've gone through 25 type combos, including Dark Fairy, which is the last one on the list. Now, Dark Fairy, again, they'll probably save it for a legendary or a mythical. I'm probably sensing it, because, Dark and Fairy are already good types for legendary Pokemon, so maybe a legendary or mythical Pokemon will be Dark Fairy. But here we have Mawile, Sableye, Purloin, and Mimikyu, because Mawile is already a Fairy type, as of Gen 6. And if it wasn't a Steel type, it could pass as a Dark type, because if it's, because Dark type, usually it doesn't matter how you look, it's more about your nature. And Mawile, with its, its horns and its big mouth on the back of its head, is meant to trick you. So that fits the Dark type theme. Sableye, it's kind of based on a goblin, and he's small, and that's kind of like the fairy type direction, since goblins are just like fairies but less nice. So a goblin, since it's a fairy but less nice, could be a Dark Fairy. So Sableye could pass as a Dark Fairy type. Purloin, I don't know why I threw it in here, but it's kind of small and cute. And while it's not one of my favorite cats Pokemon, even though I'm a fan of cats, I'm not really a fan of Purloin. Which is ironic, because I'm a fan of cats, and I'm a fan of Dark types. I love Dark types, and I love cats, but I never loved Purloin's evolution line. But I digress. Purloin might pass as a Dark Fairy type, just because it's a Dark type, and it's small and cute. And Mimikyu, of course, if it wasn't a Ghost type, could easily pass as a Dark type, just because of how creepy its lore, its backstory, its design is. I mean, the way it's its mask is hand-drawn, and how it just wants to have a friend, and if it wasn't a Ghost type, it could easily be a Dark Fairy type. So yeah, any future Dark Fairy type would possibly be designed along these lines. If I had any art skills, I would have tried to design these type combos myself. But Gen 8 is not far away, so hopefully if you are excited about Gen 8, maybe, just maybe, a lot of these 25 unused type combos will be used. Although I really doubt it's going to be all of 25 of them, because that's probably really unrealistic. But that being said, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe and share with a friend and leave a comment down below. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and check out my channel for more videos like this. And I'll see you guys next time.